Just to call David Henshaw is going to present the prize. I'll come back to announce the winner. David?
Good evening, everybody. I spoke just before lunch, and now I'm going to start us off again just before dinner. I know we're all hungry. I'm delighted to make this, to start off the presentation of this award. In partnership with Euronews, the State of the European Union, and the Brussels Press Club, I'm very proud to introduce this final part, this highlight of today's conference, this year's European Leader of the Year. The leader will be announced by Bernard. I'm not going to divulge his or her name just yet, if you haven't already guessed. However, I have been asked to set the scene. Europeans across the continent had the opportunity to choose their favourite European leader, and more than 7,000 people voted during 3 weeks for one of the 6 candidates. The 6 nominees were selected by a high-level jury, composed of several opinion leaders from the media, from academia, from civil society. And the nominees included the following personalities. Mario Draghi, the President of the European Central Bank, for his enduring management of the crisis. Jean-Claude Juncker, the Prime Minister of Luxembourg, for his handling of the Eurozone crisis throughout 2012. Doris Pack, Member of the European Parliament, Chair of the Parliament's Education and Culture Committee, for her active role in advancing the talks in the Balkans between Serbia and Kosovo. Viviane Reding, Vice President of the European Commission, in charge of justice, fundamental rights and citizenship, for defending the rights of minorities in Europe, and more recently her stand on the political situation in Hungary. Donald Tusk, Prime Minister of Poland, for his work on getting Poland as a growing economy back in line with European values. And the 6th candidates were Guy Verhofstadt, former Prime Minister of Belgium, leader of ALDE in the European Parliament, and Daniel Cohn-Bendit, member of the European Parliament, for their book For Europe, published at the end of last year. These nominees were all chosen for their strong commitment to the European project, their capacity to unite, and for their ability to bring about positive change in Europe. While I'm not going to announce the winner, and I leave that for Bernard, I will announce that the winner won by an absolute majority of votes cast. More citizens voted for the winner than all the other candidates put together. This is a remarkable result, and let me add that this demonstrates an unmistakable demand for more Europe and to get beyond austerity quickly. In the perspective of the next European elections, we are sure that the laureate will represent a guide for commissioners, members of parliament, global CEOs and European citizens, projecting Europe in a new direction with a newly competitive and cooperative attitude. I'd also like to say a few words about what our winner will face in the next 12 months. I want to set the scene a little bit. Europe faces potentially a democratic revolution next year. 50 weeks from today, the European elections start. As I said this morning, encourage your employees to vote. There will be no more conferences like this one if the turnout goes down again. The legitimacy of Europe will be even more questioned. But now we have the Lisbon Treaty, and you all know that institutions matter. Rules and business processes make a difference. And next year, potentially all Europeans will see that treaties and European rules matter, just like your business processes matter. The outcome of the European election will determine not only the composition of the European Parliament, but also the President of the European Commission. And the elected Parliamentary Commission President will obviously demand a college, an administration, which reflects the overwhelming ideology of the parliamentary majority on which the President depends more than ever before. This is parliamentary Europe, this is democratic Europe. Our European Leader of the Year will be part of that coalition negotiation. He will be part of the administration formed in June 2014 under a president, and he could be president, elected by the European Parliament in July 2014. But next year is a year of profound change across the board. We need not only a new Parliament, a new Commission President, but also to replace the President of the European Council, probably the Secretary-General of the Commission. We also need 27 commissioners alongside the President, a permanent President of the Eurozone, as well as a President of Parliament and 20 committee chairs. We also need a President of the 2015 Constitutional Convention. So to conclude, the State of the European Union this year marks the end of one regime and effectively opens the door to the next. Your European Leader of the Year will be part of the transition from old Europe to new Europe. I now hand over to Bernard, who will formally announce the winner and award the prize. Thank you.
For those of you that have not guessed, I would say that my satisfaction is that by voting for those two persons, you prove that ideas count, and as a bibliophile myself, it matters, a book matters, and that pleases me a lot. The winners are Daniel Cohn-Bendit and Guy Verhofstadt. That's fine. I do believe that the reason you got elected, both of you, is because you wrote this book, Debout l'Europe, for Europe, when translated into English. If you go to the title, it says that it is a manifesto for a post-national revolution in Europe, which really means, if I translate and read between the lines, a clear and strong manifesto for a federal European organization, maybe even for United States of Europe, looking further out. Several points just triggered reflection. On page 79, you have a chapter that is called L'Europe a-t-elle encore une raison d'être? The first subject we covered this morning had a title which was, Is Europe Still Relevant? Which really is the same thing. I was struck by the first sentence of your book, which is L'offensive est la meilleure défense, which remind me of the Sun Tzu quote in The Art of War. This Chinese general of the spring and autumn period wrote, attack is the secret of defense, and defense is the planning of the attack. So which is, again, a little bit the same thing. The last thing I want to point out is the conclusion of your first part of the book, where you address the chief of states of Europe, and you say, and that's my free translation. For a good translation in English, you should buy the For Europe book outside. But my free translation is, make them face their ineffectiveness. Do not let them rest a single day. Show them the way to the new Europe, the Europe of the Europeans. So thank you for writing it, and congratulations for getting the prize. Now, being in Belgium, we should not be obliged to present you. Everybody knows you and has known you for a long time, but many of the people, and the majority, I think, are coming from abroad, might have heard your name but don't know exactly. You were born 60 years ago in Termonde, near Ghent, in Flanders. You studied law in Ghent, and you started very early in politics, at 24. In 1977, as chief of staff of the head of the Flemish Liberal Party, then Willy de Klerk. And everything went very fast. 4 years later, or 5 years later, you took his place as head of the party. You were 29. At 32, in 1985, you were elected at the Chamber of the Representatives of Belgium, and you became Vice Prime Minister. At that time, you got the nickname, Baby Thatcher. I understand you don't totally like it, but that was that in those days. 14 years ago, in June 1999, you were elected Prime Minister of Belgium, and you did 3 terms of 9 years altogether. And since 2009, you have a Euro MP, President of the ALDE, the liberal parties. When you're not in Strasbourg or Brussels or Ghent, I've been told that one could find you in the square in Arezzo or in the surrounding in front of a glass of Chianti, or maybe on your bicycle in the hills of Tuscany. This said, I think they all have a picture of who you are, and we'll welcome your speech.
So, ladies and gentlemen, first of all, I would thank the members of the jury, because if you are not put by the jury on the list of the nominees, you cannot be elected, if I understand it well. So I would like to thank you for this award, and it is a great privilege to receive it on behalf of myself and also of Daniel Cohn-Bendit, who sadly cannot be here tonight. He is in Berlin. I guess that we won because we were 2 of us, where the other candidates were only 1 candidate. So maybe it was unfair competition. And maybe tomorrow we have a case before the European Commission, the competition authority. So I would like to stress that though we wrote this book together already 1 year ago, it unfortunately is still very true, and the reasons for making us write it are, to some extent, I think, even more valid today than a year ago, than 12 months ago. In fact, the book has been produced as a cry, as a call, as what the French are saying, un coup de gueule, a call to stop doing Europe the wrong way. Stand up Europe, the Boule Europe. This is what we think is absolutely needed, and not a sitting down, kneeling, ineffective Europe, as we have seen it the last years in this crisis. No, we need a more strong Europe, united Europe, vibrant Europe, a Europe that provides hope and solutions. And I'm very pleased that in the meanwhile it has been produced in 11 languages. Last week I was in Athens to present the Greek version of the book, and a few days ago in Poland, in Warsaw, to present the Polish edition. Because in a certain way, if you read the book, and this may surprise you maybe, Danny and myself agree to some degree with the Eurosceptics. They are, in a number of issues, right in criticizing the Union. It does not work well today. But of course, they are fundamentally wrong in their solutions, in their prescriptions, in their so-called solutions for the problems. We need not less Europe, we need to reinvent Europe. And we need also to reinvent our sovereignty and to adapt it to the reality of today's world. It's the only way to regain power. It's not longer possible to implement your sovereignty or to protect your sovereignty on a national level. We have to reinvent it on the European level to regain power. Power of the world we live in, and this means exercising this sovereignty on the European level, on the level of the European Union. And the nationalists here are very wrong. It's not by going back to the national borders, or even worse, going back in the past, that we shall find the solutions for the crisis we are facing today. It's by regaining power at the Union level that we will succeed. And I think that there are mainly 3 imperatives that require greater integration today in our European Union. The first is and we have certainly talked about this today, the economic imperative. We need to preserve our common currency because, let's be honest, the state may exist without a currency, but never has a currency existed without a state. That is simply impossible to do so. And this means that we must move ahead with a banking union, an economic union, a fiscal union, a common bond market, and a common European government. Because otherwise, my fear is that this common currency will disappear if we only have a currency union and not all the building blocks, all the necessary elements behind this currency. The half measures that have been put in place since the start of the crisis are not sufficient. And even the OMT, the backstop provided by the European Central Bank, shall have its limits. It has in any way taken off the pressure from the politicians to find long-term solutions for this crisis. It has calmed down the markets too, but unfortunately it has calmed down also the politicians in their way to find structural solutions for this crisis. And what is crystal clear is that if we don't make the necessary changes, we will be faced, in my opinion, with what is already started now, a Japanese-style long period of economic stagnation, at least for the next 10 years. So, in my opinion, in our opinion, sitting back is no option. And we can but continue to urge the political leadership in the Commission and in the European Council to live up to their responsibilities today. The second reason why we need more Europe, I think, is because we are faced with a political imperative. Because without an increased political union, we cannot, in fact, effectively protect our interests, our model of society in the world of tomorrow. We cannot protect our way of life, our future. And it's only by interacting as a union with a more integrated European Union that we can defend our interest in the rest of the world with our trading partners, and that we can be sure that we will not be overwhelmed. And certainly the start of the negotiations for a new FTA, a free trade agreement between the US and the European Union, are a great opportunity. And finally, I think that we have also a cultural imperative. Europe is more than simply a single market. It is more than an economic area. It's a civilization. We have a common history and links that tie us all together. And this is very clear when you look at Europe from Asia and even from the other side of the Atlantic, from the States. We have a unique European way of doing things. And we have a unique culture in the European continent. And this is something we need to value and we need to preserve. So ladies and gentlemen, what the book I wrote with Annie Cohn-Bendit calls for is what we have called, as a subtitle of the book, a transition to a post-national Europe. What is a very difficult word in the European Union. Nationalism in Europe has not served us well. It has mainly brought us hardship and wars. So we call for a jump forward in evolution to surpass the nation, transcend the national level. And by developing at a union level a real democratic, and I should say also effective supranational entity that complements our nation states and enable us to regain sovereignty to regain control over our lives. So, ladies and gentlemen, I ask you with me to stand up for Europe, our only hope, I should say, for the future. So thank you for the prize. Thank you.
And this brings us to the end of our third conference on Europe. If we look at what happened today, I think it It went fairly well. There were several people concerned this morning about the technology. Well, thank you, Microsoft. You're as good today as you were several years back. But it worked. It worked. It was nice. Thank you to all the speakers that spent their time thinking and exchanging ideas. Thank you to Ernst & Young for their study. Thanks to INSEAD and Bose for the second study. Thank you, Bob, for once again playing all that and managing it, and you're a fantastic conductor. Thank you to all of you. Have a nice trip back home. And for those that are invited tonight to the gala dinner, it's on the other side of the big yard when you go out in about 1 hour at 8 o'clock. We'll have one more speech and some music. Good evening. Thank you, everyone.
Examen de stratégie en allemand. Ah ouais, mais de votre temps, ça fait si longtemps, je pense que vous êtes obligé de parler français, allemand, anglais. 3 langues. Maintenant, c'est 3 langues depuis l'année. Oui.